just think one day, probably within the next 2-3 years, in fact probably, yeah, within a couple of years I would have thought, you're going to have self-driving cars around. I mean, they are already around in the UK on test from Google and a couple of other manufacturers, I believe, as well. But, you know, let's be honest, it's probably going to be Google that get there first. And of course, they'll probably run Android. That'd be quite awkward, wouldn't it? You know, I love Android. I've always had Android phones for, well, ever since I had a proper smartphone. I had a Windows phone back when they were Windows, what were they, Windows Mobile, and then I swapped over to Android about 6 years now, 5-6 years ago, and I gotta be honest, I love Android, I do. But whether they should have a mobile phone operating system for a car that drives itself, probably not. So hopefully they'll use a special system and not just an adaptation of Android. But yeah, you'll be able to drive along one day in a self-driving car, and then what will that do to driving tests and stuff? You know, will you still have to have a driving test if you're driving a self-driving car? It's an interesting point though, isn't it? It would be very useful for people that are disabled, for example, because they can just get in the car, say where they want to go, and it'll drive. I think the question is just how well is it going to do in real life, in, you know, on roads like this, for example, where there's traffic, there's stop-start traffic, traffic lights, etc. Just how good is it going to be? How's it going to recognise that, say, those traffic lights in front of us have gone from red and then to amber and green, for example? How's it going to recognise that? Because basically you can't just turn around and program it so that it drives the same for every part of the world, because obviously in different parts of the world they have different traffic rules, they drive on different sides of the road, things like that. So a car that's programmed to drive in America, for example, is not going to drive well around here, is it? For a start, it'd be driving on the other side of the road. That wouldn't be good. But and it'd be driving at different speed limits as well. But yeah, obviously you'd have to program it, custom program it for each specific country. But that's not what I mean. What I mean is the ins and outs of it. Is how is it going to know that, for example, there's a little white car in front of us and we're going to have to slow down because he's braking? How is it going to know that there's a speed camera over there and not to break the speed limit? How is it going to know even that there is a speed limit just here? Is it going to use a sat-nav map? Because you think about it, and I'm sure you can agree with this, I'm sure you've had this experience, sat-nav maps don't always know what the right speed is. You know, it depends if they're out of date, if the speed limit has changed, etc, etc. That's going to be a problem for people as well. I'm going slow because I want to change over to the next lane. Ooh, an ambulance. It hasn't got its lights on, but I think it is an ambulance actually. I don't need suspicion, making my decisions. Whatever the words are on it. I don't know. There's 2x4s. Well, I'm ever 2x4s. There's one of them running late, or one of them running really early. That's weird. 2x4s, the same bus service, one right in front of the other. I'm pretty sure they don't do 2x4s at the same time.